And we're back, like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Monday morning with me. As you see, I changed the backdrop, got to keep things visually interesting, but also this is not going to be a full-length episode, at least I don't think. But I wanted to get on here and talk about something that's going on in the world of Hollywood that most people can't figure out. There's a lot of stuff that has happened in Hollywood in the last, century plus, where you look at it and say, well, that doesn't really make any sense. But there's something going on right now that has even the most intelligent people and the most canny observers of Hollywood over the decades just basically taking wild guesses to try to surmise questions that really shouldn't have come up in the first place. So as we speak, what will most likely be 94-year-old Clint Eastwood Jr., Clint Eastwood, what will be his final film, Juror number 2, is in theaters. It opened last Friday, 3 days ago, to very solid reviews. It's sitting at, I believe, 91% on Rotten Tomatoes with just under 100 reviews collected. I don't need to tell you that is a very high score. There have been Oscar winners for Best Picture that scored in the high 80s. So this is a film that appears to be of high quality. We know the cast is terrific with Toni Collette and Nicholas Hoult and Kiefer Sutherland and others. And it does have the man from El Paso behind the camera. Clint Eastwood has won 2 Best Picture awards as producer. And those 2 films, Unforgiven, $1 Million Baby, he directed. This is a guy who, well, let's just say he has been Warner Brothers' most consistent moneymaker for more than 5 decades. It seems to come down to the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, David Zaslav, that he's the one who, again, we're speculating, we assume that he was the one who decided on this bizarre release pattern for the movie. Now, Zaslav is a polarizing figure. He didn't accidentally get into that position, didn't luck into it. He is very smart when it comes to business. He ran the business end of, I believe, MSNBC, and he expanded them hugely. Like, that's kind of how he got to Warner Brothers Discovery. He was somebody who just kept getting promoted, and wherever he went, shareholders were happy. Hate to say it that way, but it's the truth. Now, he has made some decisions with Warner that people have said the shareholders aren't happy, and he might be in a little bit of trouble. We don't know specifically. We can just assume because he is somebody who has a firm control and understands the flow of money in and out of the business, because he's a financial guy first. But we're still speculating. Maybe he saw the movie a month ago and said, this film is trash. Let's just bury it. I have no idea. What we do know, though, for sure, is when Zaslav took over as CEO, when he was doing a kind of, and this is common knowledge, what I'm saying. I'm not telling you anything that you couldn't find out with a quick Google search and get 50 hits on inside of a second. But when he took over the operation and began, we'll use the word auditing, like my dad, who was a CPA, when he began to audit certain projects to figure out, okay, we made money with this, things he had nothing to do with, in other words. And when he got there, he wanted to understand the way the movie business was operating, the previous executives, some of whom stayed on, all of these things. So Clint Eastwood's 2021 film, Cry Macho, was a project that bounced around. Again, it went through so many hands. There was talk, Stallone was interested at some point in the 90s, Arnold was interested, and Clint had circled it for quite some time. He ended up making it. And as with every single film that Clint Eastwood has directed, now 40, he brought Cry Macho in on time and under budget. But even with that, the film was a disappointment. Now, maybe a kind of quiet story and an interior type of story like Cry Macho was never going to be a box office hit. We don't know. It's strange that so many major players in Hollywood wanted to do it, and it was up to Clint to finally get it done. So when Zaslav was going over various projects with the executives and say, okay, well, this film was a disappointment. What was your thinking when you greenlit it or whatever? He would have said something like that. when he was discussing Cry Macho. Now, bear in mind, he wasn't angry that it lost money. It had nothing to do with him. He simply wanted to get an idea of the thought process. So apparently the executives who he spoke to specifically about Clint's previous film, Cry Macho, they said something to the effect of that they didn't necessarily believe that the film was going to make money. They didn't wholeheartedly believe in the project. But they funded it anyway because they felt they owed it to Eastwood, who had, after all, helped to build fucking studio with so many hit films and so many awards. Zaslav didn't like that. He just didn't like that answer. Like if they had said, we were convinced we had the right marketing in place and the cast and the budget was low, we were convinced that we were going to turn triple the production cost. They could have lied. If they had said that, that would have been it. But the answer really pissed him off because he went public with it, and that was probably a mistake because when he said, I don't like what I was told, this is not show friends, this is show business. A lot of people took that as a crack at Eastwood, and I don't think he meant it that way, but that's how it came across. And let me tell you something. There are certain sacred cows. Clint was already in his 90s. You just don't do it. You don't say anything that could be construed as a crack at that guy who won all those Oscars for Warner and who made all that money with movies going back to the late 1960s. You say something else. You just don't do that. So he was embarrassed. He was really raked over the coals, deservedly so, even if he didn't mean it. You know, sometimes it's not about, like they say, trust the artist, not the art. The perception became reality. So he probably didn't want to be in the Clint Eastwood business anymore. That famous quote by a Castle Rock executive in 1992 when Clint Eastwood, whose career was apparently over when he was 62, his agent wanted him to be up for In the Line of Fire, and some random executive said, we're not in the Clint Eastwood bit. Could have been Columbia, actually. We're not in the Clint Eastwood business anymore. And oops, here comes Unforgiven. And everybody was, in fact, in the Clint Eastwood business. Well, if Mr. Zaslav was trying to move away, yeah, we know he could still make another movie. We don't want any more movies. He was shamed, more or less, into agreeing to fund one more project. And he said all the right things. He didn't apologize because he didn't feel he necessarily had anything to apologize for. But he said, Clint has brought a project to us. We're very excited about it. He has our full backing, and let's go make a movie. Words to that effect. Again, you can Google the exact quotes if you're interested. That's juror number 2. So with all of this, why are they burying the film? Why did they only release it in 50 theaters? Because people right away, when it premiered at the AFI Festival about a week and a half, I think it was about a week and a half ago, there were a couple of people that said, well, it's just okay. But then there were other people, sorry for my adorable little cat here. Sheldon, say hi. He's not interested. There were other people that said, now, wait a second. This is one of the best studio movies of the year. This is the kind of adult fare, not adult movies, but the kind of movie pitched at adults that Hollywood used to turn out. People like Clint Eastwood directing movies like this. Thoughtful, dramatic films with terrific casts that treat their audiences like adults. Why is this movie not getting a full release? Now, there's a counter argument that says that the powers that be knew that they had a winner and wanted to do a very slow release to build word of mouth, which is what Hollywood used to do until Jaws in 1975, when they suddenly realized, hey, we don't need to do a scattered release pattern to build up word of mouth. We can just drop the movie into 2,000 theaters and take our chances. Maybe, just maybe. And we might find this out come award season, because regardless of how much money this movie makes here, or it's actually doing very well overseas. I should point out, I think it made $6 million in opening weekend in Europe, which is a terrific number. So you know that there is an audience for it. But when the Oscar nominations are announced, and we're going to find out, because at some point, this strategy will get leaked. There'll be a memo. there will be something. There is social media and there will always be somebody. It probably won't come out. It won't come out for the time being. But as a fan, as an unabashed Clint Eastwood fan, my single favorite person to ever work in the movie business, Arnold Schwarzenegger is a very, very close second. I'm just thrilled that he seems to have turned out one final very good movie. Maybe I'll see it and I'll think it sucks, but generally speaking, a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, it indicates quality. These are serious people. Critics are not just going to butter him up if they think the film sucks. They're going to be honest, because Cry Macho, you look at the numbers, I don't even know if it was a fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. And that's the thing. The Mule was just okay. The casting was amazing. Bradley Cooper, fantastic. Diane Wiest as his wife. I didn't like the movie. Sully, to me, is his last really, really good film. And obviously, American Sniper was an enormous worldwide hit. But I saw a featurette where they interviewed Nicholas Hoult and Toni Collette and Kiefer Sutherland, who, of course, his father Donald was a friend of Clint's, and they had worked together going back to 1970s Kelly's Heroes. And then they did Space Cowboys together. So Kiefer was really excited to work with him. And in the featurette, the man was 93 going on 94 when this movie was shot. Yes, he looks old, but he's moving around the set like a man decades younger. He's giving actual direction. He is showing, at one point, Nicholas Hoult, how he wants him to turn his head for a particular shot. It's just impossible to conceive. And I know his mom made it past 100, so he has the genetics, and he lives, from what we understand, he was doing macrobiotic. He was having food shipped to him on the set of Two Mules for Sister Sarah, 1968. Everyone in the cast and crew, with the exception of Clint Eastwood, fell victim to Montezuma's revenge. And Clint, with his diet of fresh meats and fruits and bottled water, he didn't get sick. So yeah, he's old school, but he also was not old school. He was new school when he was in his 30s. He was doing stuff. So what the fuck is this guy doing? And he was the first big star to have his own production company on the Warner Brothers lot, Malpaso Productions, hence why I call him the man from Malpaso. Now, nobody knows how this is all going to shake out. There is a chance, because Juror number 2 did very well in the limited theaters it was in. They might expand it. And then there was talk coming out of Warner. We might look to go with a bigger release pattern towards the end of the year. We don't know what's going to happen. What is certain is that no one knows, but that Clint Eastwood, at age 94, appears to have turned out a really good movie. And I am happy about it. And that's really all I wanted to say, because we're just speculating at this point. We know how many theaters the movie is screening in. We know that the reviews are terrific. 91% is fantastic. And I wish that I could see the movie, because I would go to see it. I would have seen it this past weekend, and I would see it this week. Now, 50 theaters in the United States. Of course, it's playing in 3 theaters in New York, but it's in the city. If it was in a theater here on Long Island, I would, absolutely make it my business to see it. And they're not sure yet, unless something was just announced, because I did check and I didn't get any information when it's due to hit streaming. Because that was the other thing with Cry Macho, which was that it was one of those HBO Max at the time where it landed on streaming and in theaters the same day. Now, that actually worked for Matrix Resurrection. It didn't work for Cry Macho. It really hurt, and not enough people subscribed as a result of that film. That whole thing just didn't work out. But Juror number 2, in theaters, if you can see it, if it's somehow near where you live, if you live in Manhattan, you have 3 choices. I know it's playing at the theater right by Lincoln Center, among 2 others I'm not remembering offhand. I don't think it's playing at the 2nd Avenue, at the theater on 12th and 2nd. I forgot what that was called. But if you can see it, it sure seems that it's worth it. And I hope that it comes to streaming pretty soon, if they're not going to expand the distribution angle. And they're just going to let the film presumably rack up probably 6, 7, 8 Oscar nominations, because that's what it sounds like from the word of mouth. And Clint is very popular from the artistic standpoint with the Academy. That's the other thing that helps him. I mean, Toni Collette is practically an end boss. She's great in whatever she does. And Nicholas Hoult, to me, was the best thing about Renfield, a movie I really wanted to like. I love Nicolas Cage, but I thought that film I just didn't think it was good. He was good. Everything else was lousy. Like Cage didn't go over the top enough. I thought he was going to do a vampire's kiss there, that movie from 19... No good. But that's all. Just wanted to talk about this and share my thoughts on Juror number 2 and what the heck is going on with Warner Brothers Discovery and why they decided to put it out into the world the way they did and have. And I guess we'll find out come Oscar time next February or March if this was some incredibly brilliant marketing plan or whether they just didn't think the film was any good and didn't realize until it was almost too late. They didn't want to all just have egg on their faces, as they say. This has been episode, I think I'm up to 349 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for joining me on this Monday morning here in New York. And if you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Until then, peace.